Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am the Omni viewer, and welcome to Genre Bender's Obscurities and Flawed Gems, where we look at the best stuff you've never heard of. At long last, we are in the year 2020, a year regarded by generation after generation as the future. Nobody knows what's going to happen, but I say that no matter what this year holds in store for us, at least the world hasn't been overrun by dragons like it was in Reign of Fire.
Does that mean you'll finally review Reign of Fire like you said you would do years ago but never got around to?
Nah, I'm just saying that to throw people off before I review that manga about the Ultraman monsters turned into anime waifus. Of course I'm gonna review Reign of Fire. I happen to like that movie, and frankly, I don't think it gets enough love. In case you missed it, Reign of Fire is set in 2020 after the planet was devastated by an army of dragons that multiplied like rabbits and burned everything in their path. Specifically, they are wyverns, seeing as how their front limbs are also their wings. But the movie calls them dragons, so that's the term I'll be using. I just wanted to clarify that I do know the difference before you went to leave that in the comments section. Our protagonist in this post-apocalyptic world is Quinn, who was at ground zero of the dragon uprising as a child and now oversees a castle stronghold in England where a handful of survivors live. Unfortunately, years of struggling have the people on edge, and it's looking like Quinn won't be able to hold the community together for much longer. Just as the seeds of rebellion are being sown, Americans show up. The leader of this pack is Van Zan, a dragon slayer who knows how to exploit the dragon's sole weakness, and he intends to end their threat once and for all by killing the alpha male, without whom the creatures will go extinct. Reign of Fire is one of the few giant monster stories with a post-apocalyptic setting, which is actually kind of weird when you think about it. There are plenty of post-apocalypse stories that have been brought on by zombies, aliens, war, disease, and even vampires, but not that many where giant monsters are the culprits.
What about the Godzilla anime trilogy?
Bite your tongue, you filthy lizard! We do not speak the name of that abomination in this house!
Hey, what are you blowing up at me for? You talk about it all the time!
You're right. Sorry. That was mean. I shouldn't have taken it out on you.
Apology accepted. Next time, think before you snap.
Anyway, Reign of Fire decided to take that approach, presenting us with a world where dragons not only exist, but have beaten us. It's an unconventional approach for a giant monster movie, and it allows the film to play around with genre conventions. Reign of Fire fills itself with everything you expect from a fantasy story and everything you expect from a giant monster story, and uses the setting to justify blending them together. The only safe haven from the unforgiving landscape is a medieval castle. The Dragon Slayers use tanks and helicopters. Popular entertainment has ascended to the rank of mythology, while mythology has become terrifying reality. It's a prime example of a genre bender, the kind of film this series was made to explore. It straddles sci-fi and fantasy to become something unique. The dragons, or as specified earlier, wyverns if you want to get technical, are what really set Reign of Fire apart from other post-apocalypse stories, and they make a very good case for why giant monsters should be a more regular part of this genre. First and foremost, dragons carry a deep cultural significance. They are, after all, humanity's oldest opponent, dominating the legends and religions of every culture on Earth. There's a sort of poetry to the notion that these creatures who have been with us from the beginning should also be there at the end. These dragons in particular are presented as a relatively realistic threat. They are flesh and blood creatures who can be defeated, but not just anyone can go out and be a dragon slayer, and their one weakness is so specific that there's no guarantee you can exploit it in time to win. On top of that, they're surprisingly intelligent. To be clear, they're still animals incapable of complex reasoning, but they are just smart enough to figure out how to outwit the humans, and the alpha male who serves as the final boss can even follow trails to retaliate against anyone who tries invading his home. This makes them highly effective as antagonists, like the Pacific Rim kaiju before Pacific Rim was even a thought. On every level, Reign of Fire is as good as you could possibly hope for it to be. Director Rob Bowman spoke at length in various interviews about how, even though this was a B-movie creature feature, he did his best to make it the way he would make a high-profile film, and it shows. The actors perform believably, the music is fitting for every scene it's in, the action is thrilling, and the special effects still look pretty good even by today's standards. Yet Reign of Fire didn't get much love when it was in theaters, and even today it's mostly overlooked. But why is that? Well, you would think that it might have something to do with the straightforwardness of the writing. The characters in Reign of Fire, while not bad, are not especially complex and conform to archetypes, which you could argue is an extension of the fantasy tropes employed. Some story elements could also have been handled better. For example, the kid who Quinn has semi-adopted could have used a lot more screen time for his arc to register. We also get certain character revelations delivered in throwaway lines of dialogue, which removes some of the impact they might have otherwise had. So Reign of Fire is far from a perfect film, but that's not the critique which stood out to me the most back in the day. It's been a very long time, so I don't remember exactly where I saw this review. If it was online, the website may no longer exist, and if it was in a magazine, God only knows if it was archived. But I'll always remember what it said because what was said makes me think the reviewer missed the point of the movie. In the review, the writer lamented that he would have much rather seen a movie where the dragons are out destroying everything and bringing on the apocalypse, rather than see a movie set in the aftermath of this event. Would such a movie have been cool to see? Perhaps, but that's not the story Reign of Fire was telling. It's a post-apocalypse story by choice. As cliché as this may sound, post-apocalypse stories are about exploring the human condition, and they do so by taking humanity and putting it in the most extreme of survival situations. Whereas most stories explore how man will rise up to overcome certain doom, a post-apocalypse story explores what man does when he loses and certain doom has triumphed. Which of humanity's traits rise to the surface and which die off? Does the human race come together or break apart? Do we prove that we deserve to survive or that we deserve to be wiped out? Is what we rebuild from the ashes better or worse than what came before? Depending on who is telling the story and why it's being told, the outlook can either be optimistic or pessimistic, though that's speaking in very broad terms and the nuance can vary on a case-by-case basis. Reign of Fire definitely falls on the optimistic side of the spectrum, which circles back to the idea that this is a fantasy story, or a variation thereof. Fantasy is a generally upbeat genre, hence why a distinction is always made for dark fantasy. Dragons in this genre exist as opponents for the hero to overcome, and thematically, the dragons in this movie fill that same role. In fact, making Reign of Fire post-apocalyptic can be seen as a natural extension of the fantasy genre. The stories that fuel modern Western fantasy can often be seen as precursors to the post-apocalypse story. The legend of King Arthur is usually set after the fall of Rome, when the great empire had collapsed and its citizens were scattered, attempting to rebuild civilization amid the ruins left behind. Robert E. Howard's Conan stories are set in the Hyperborean Age, a period we are told came about after the sinking of Atlantis, and without their advanced methods and technologies, only a hostile primitive world remained. Different tales of prehistoric life sometimes mix humans and dinosaurs together to show a transitionary period, where the dinosaurs are dying out and man is rising up to take over this harsh environment ravaged by monsters and natural disasters. Reign of Fire carries on this tradition in a way we rarely see done. It once again shows people struggling to rebuild after the end of civilization, but this time the civilization is our own, and the survivors could be any one of us. Sure, it could have been about seeing the dragons go on a world tour and ravage all of the familiar landmarks, but the ideas carried within would have been lost, and given the lack of stories like this, I think that would have been a shame. I don't know if Reign of Fire is the best example of a post-apocalyptic giant monster story, but given how few of those there are in the world of fiction, I think it shows the potential for what that genre can be. Then again, if you're not into all that deeper theme and meaning stuff, it's still a solid dragon movie, and that alone makes it worth watching. Until such time as we meet again, this is the Omni Viewer signing off. And in acknowledgement of the date on which this was uploaded, happy Appreciate a Dragon Day, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it as well as subscribe to the channel for more content of a similar nature. Also, check the description for links to our Twitter, DeviantArt, and Patreon pages, as well as the Amazon link for the novel Operation Red Dragon: The Daikaiju Wars Part 1, penned by yours truly. Thank you all, and we appreciate your support.